Ends Reach is an ambitious indie game and current VCS exclusive featuring a large map to explore and unlock and a story of a rescue attempt and the consequence of power and technology. Ends Reach has a lot more atmosphere and setting than its rudimentary 3D graphics might indicate at first glance. Graphics are unique, half consequence of small-scale indie development and half a deliberate choice. The also clunky but endearing combat gives Ends Reach an almost PS2 or Dreamcast-era vibe, and the developer has said in interviews that early 3D Zelda and Metroid games were an inspiration. Ends Reach has tons of power-up nodes to find, many hidden and more difficult places to get to. The gameplay itself is mostly about finding all of the pieces needed to equip new items that allow you to access new areas. The game's unforgiving in many of the same ways older open-world style action platformers were back in the day, and getting stuck is one of them. Thankfully, there's a walkthrough video by VCS videomaker Cuirass Productions that I'll link to in the video description. Without the video, I don't think I would have completed the game due to not being able to recognize all the places I've missed and all the locations of all the gates and other roadblocks scattered around the twisty and confusing landscape. There is a map, although I found it more confusing than useful. This is a game asking you to remember where things are, then go back to locations you've already explored to make progress. Each weapon has at least one additional special ability. You'll access a hotbar slot by pushing L1, then point to the power you want to assign with the right stick. Then, using square activates the ability. Some are exceptionally useful, including a healing over time, area of effect placement, light to see in the dark, and extremely effective bombs and damage over time magma pools. You'll get more health and armor over time by finding power-ups, and you'll need all the health you can get for the game's boss fights. These fights are the hardest part of Ends Reach, and a few took many tries to beat. There's also a symbol-based language puzzle about halfway through you can brute force a solution to if you need to. Ends Reach is a working checkpoint system, so you'll start off basically where you left off. There are multiple save slots available. This might be one of the longest games in the VCS. My playthrough was shorter because I used a walkthrough once I got stuck, but a 15 to 20 hour playtime seems reasonable. At the end, you'll get a time and percentage completion. Other than experiencing the game again, there's not much motivation for another playthrough, but this really isn't that kind of game. Ends Reach is surprisingly engaging, and great given its initially rudimentary presentation and gameplay, neither of which is an actual problem, and ends up making the game more memorable than it would have been otherwise. There simply is not a game like this on the VCS, and anyone who appreciates older action combat and platforming games, think PS1 through the Dreamcast, will find a lot to like. The sound and music is also great, and the game runs great on the VCS. The classic controller is not supported due to the need for additional buttons. Ends Reach is a fairly large game in size, at more than 6 gigs, so make sure you've got some space on whatever drive it's going on. A few tips: playing with sound on helps, as sometimes you'll need to hit pipes and other machines to activate them, and the only feedback is sound. You can't get onto lava platforms until you get an ice sword. You can't break open fire gates until you get a fire axe. Enemies keep respawning, and there's no real incentive to keep defeating them. You're far better off running past enemies in some cases. I also found dashing across the landscape faster than running, at least as long as you have the power for it. You'll also acquire grenades. I never really used them myself, as most combat was close quarters, and I found it easier to dodge. Pressing the menu button on your controller calls up your inventory, map, glossary, and options, and save screen. There's a higher fidelity but lower game performance mode. It improves some anti-aliasing and looks maybe a little nicer, but that setting also reset every time I loaded the game, so I kept it on default for this video. Ends Reach is a gem on the VCS. It's the kind of game that might get lost initially on PC, but instead gets a spotlight in a community that can recognize its roots in earlier platformer and exploration games. Its clunkiness might be one of its best parts, although the atmosphere and overall vibe keeps you going even when you aren't sure where to go next. The game is priced at $15. Thanks for watching. I'll have more game reviews in the coming weeks, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss them. Liking the channel helps this work get in front of others and is much appreciated. Have fun!